I've replayed that day over and over in my mind, trying to piece together how everything fell apart so quickly. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not in my relationship, not with someone I trusted so deeply. But there it was, staring me in the face like an undeniable truth. My boyfriend lent his luxury car to my friend, not me, not someone random, her. And the reason? He thought she was his secret crush. It was an ordinary weekend, or so I thought. We had plans for brunch at a cozy cafe we loved, just the two of us. But when I arrived at his place, something felt off. His car, a sleek black luxury sedan he guarded like a precious gem, was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe he parked it elsewhere or lent it to the valet. But when I stepped inside, the look on his face told me something wasn't right. "Where's your car?" I asked casually, setting down my bag. He hesitated, his eyes darting away like a child caught sneaking cookies before dinner. "Oh, I lent it to a friend," he said, almost too quickly, as if rehearsing the words. My heart skipped a beat. Lent it to a friend? He'd never let anyone touch that car, not even me. My voice trembled, but I tried to play it cool. "What friend?" I asked, my curiosity now laced with suspicion. He didn't answer right away, and that silence hung heavy in the room, louder than any words he could have spoken. Then, as if he had no choice but to confess, he muttered a name I didn't expect. It wasn't one of his childhood buddies or a coworker. It was her. My friend. The friend I had trusted. The friend I thought would never cross certain lines. My breath caught, and I felt the first crack in the foundation of trust I'd built with him. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Why would he lend her his prized possession? He'd always been so particular about that car, treating it like an extension of himself. And now, he'd just handed over the keys without hesitation? Something wasn't adding up. My stomach churned as the questions piled up in my mind. But it wasn't just the act. It was why he did it. And the answer was something I couldn't have prepared for. His words echoed in my mind as I stood there, frozen. "She needed a ride, and I thought it would be fine," he said, but the way his voice wavered told me there was more to the story. I crossed my arms, forcing myself to sound calmer than I felt. "Why her? Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, keeping my tone steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. He looked at me, his eyes shifting between guilt and panic. I didn't think it was a big deal," he stammered, running his hand through his hair. "It's just a car, right?" "Just a car?" I wanted to scream. No, it wasn't just a car. It was his car, the one he'd never even let me drive without a dozen rules and warnings. But now, my friend had the keys, and he was acting like it was nothing. My mind reeled, trying to piece together the puzzle. Something didn't feel right. He wasn't the type to act impulsively, especially with something he valued so much. "Where is she going?" I pressed, my voice sharper now, cutting through his half-hearted excuses. "Why couldn't you give her a ride yourself?" I needed answers, but deep down, I feared the truth. He hesitated, and in that pause I saw the guilt deepen in his eyes. She said she had an important meeting," he replied, the words fumbling out like a poorly rehearsed line in a play. "And I thought she'd be more comfortable taking the car." Comfortable? The word hit me like a punch to the gut. He'd gone out of his way to make her feel comfortable, but what about me? Why did her comfort matter more than my trust? I felt a chill run through me as a darker thought crept into my mind. Was there more to this than he was letting on? I took a step closer, my voice quieter now, but no less demanding. "You're lying to me," I said, meeting his gaze. He flinched, his shoulders slumping as if the weight of the truth was too heavy to carry. "Why did you really do it? Why her?" And then, it happened. The truth slipped out in a moment of weakness, a confession he couldn't take back. I thought she might like me," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I just wanted to do something nice for her." The room spun. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My boyfriend, had lent his luxury car to my friend because he thought she might be his secret crush. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, as my world began to crack beneath my feet. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, trying to process the betrayal, the utter disregard for our relationship. "You thought she might like you?" I repeated, each word dripping with disbelief. "So what? You decided to impress her with your car? Were you hoping she'd fall for you?" His face turned pale, and he stammered, No, it's not like that. I wasn't thinking straight. I didn't mean for it to. I don't know. I shook my head, stepping back as tears welled in my eyes. You don't know? That's your excuse? My voice broke, and the anger I'd been holding back came rushing out. You didn't think about me, about what this would mean. You just handed her the keys like I don't even exist. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear another excuse, another justification for something so selfish, so hurtful. My heart ached, but more than that, I felt humiliated. The man I trusted had not only let me down, but had done so for someone I called a friend. I turned away, needing space to breathe, to think. But even as I tried to collect myself, one question burned in my mind. Was this really a moment of weakness, or was it something deeper? Something I couldn't ignore. I couldn't stay silent anymore. The betrayal was too raw, too close. As I turned back to him, I felt a surge of anger that I could no longer contain. Do you even hear yourself? I snapped, my voice trembling with a mix of fury and heartbreak. You didn't think about how this would hurt me? About what it says about us? He ran his hands over his face, as though trying to erase the shame he felt. I made a mistake, okay? He said, his tone defensive now, as though admitting it should somehow make it better. I wasn't thinking clearly. I don't know, maybe she needed help, and Stop, I interrupted, holding up my hand. This isn't about her needing help. This is about you, about the fact that you thought it was okay to lend your car, something you've never trusted anyone with, to her. Because what? You thought she liked you? I could barely say the words without my stomach twisting in knots. He opened his mouth to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. Do you even realize what you've done? I continued, my voice growing steadier as my emotions turned cold. You didn't just betray my trust. You humiliated me. You made me feel like I'm not enough, like I'm some placeholder while you fantasize about someone else. The room was heavy with silence, his guilt hanging between us like a storm cloud. He looked at me, his eyes pleading, but I couldn't find it in me to feel sympathy. Not now. Not after what he'd admitted. I didn't mean for it to come across that way, he said finally, his voice quiet. I wanted to do something nice for her, and I didn't think it through. I thought it would be harmless. Harmless. The word stung like a slap. Harmless? I echoed, my voice rising. You call undermining our relationship harmless? You call putting someone else's feelings above mine harmless? I shook my head, taking a deep breath to steady myself. You didn't just lend her a car, you lent her our trust. You made her a priority in a way you've never done for me, and you did it without thinking about what it would cost. I could see the weight of my words sinking in as he sat down, his head in his hands. But even then, it wasn't enough. He wasn't the only one I needed answers from. If my friend had accepted this, if she had taken his car knowing what it might mean, didn't she bear some responsibility too? The thought hit me like a cold wave. I couldn't just blame him. I had to know the full story. I'm going to talk to her, I said, my voice firm. His head shot up, panic flashing in his eyes. No, don't, he said quickly, almost pleading. She didn't mean anything by it. She doesn't even know. Exactly. I cut him off. She doesn't know. She doesn't know what you were thinking, what this really meant. And I'm not going to sit here and wonder what's going on in her mind. I'm going to find out. He stared at me, helpless, as I grabbed my phone and dialed her number. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was clear. If this relationship was going to survive, if I was going to survive it, I needed the truth. Not just from him, but from her too. As the phone rang, my heart raced, 1,000 questions swirling in my mind. Would she admit to knowing his intentions? Would she deny it altogether? And if she did, what would that mean for us? When she picked up, her voice was cheerful, oblivious. Hey, what's up? She asked, like everything was normal. I took a deep breath, gripping the phone tightly. We need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. About the car, about everything. The silence on the other end was deafening. The silence on the other end felt endless, stretching out until I could almost hear my own heartbeat. Finally, she spoke, her voice tinged with confusion. The car? What about it? Her reaction wasn't what I expected. Wait, what? He said it was fine. He told me you knew, she said, her voice rising deep. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. He told me he lent you his car, I said, each word measured. and I need to understand why you thought that was okay. Ensively. Are you saying you didn't? I felt a pang of anger shoot through me, not just at her but at him, too. No, I said coldly. I didn't, and I'd like to know exactly what he told you. Her sigh was audible, like she was trying to piece things together. Look, I was in a bind. My car broke down, and I needed to get to an important meeting across town. I called him because I thought he could give me a ride, but instead, he said I could take his car. Her words hit me like a brick. You called him? Why not me? I asked, unable to hide the hurt in my voice. I thought you were busy, she replied quickly, almost apologetic. I didn't want to bother you, and he offered, so I figured it was fine. I didn't know there was anything behind it. For a moment I was silent, processing her explanation. Her tone was genuine, and the story checked out, but it didn't erase what I'd learned from him. Did he say anything? I asked carefully, my voice quieter now. Anything about why he was being so generous? She paused, and I could almost hear the gears turning in her head. No, she said slowly, but now that you mention it, he was acting a little strange, like overly eager to help. I thought he was just being nice, but is there something you're not telling me? I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. Did she even realize how he felt? Or was she as blindsided by this as I was? He said he thought you might like him, I admitted finally, my stomach twisting with every word. That's why he did it. Her gasp on the other end was sharp, and when she spoke, her voice was filled with disbelief. What? No, absolutely not. I don't see him like that. He's your boyfriend. I would never. Then why didn't you tell me? I interrupted, the anger bubbling up again. Why didn't you think it was important to let me know you'd borrowed his car? I didn't think it was a big deal, she shot back, her voice defensive now. I thought he was just helping me out. I didn't know he had those kinds of thoughts. Her words hung heavy between us. On one hand, I wanted to believe her. On the other, the damage was already done. Whether or not she intended to, she had become part of something that was tearing my relationship apart. You should have told me, I said quietly, my voice hardening. You should have at least asked if I was okay with it. She sighed again, this time softer, like she finally understood the weight of the situation. You're right, she admitted. I should have. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. Her apology felt sincere, but it didn't make the pain go away. I need some time, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, to figure out where I stand with all of this, with him and with you. Of course, she said quickly. Take all the time you need. I want you to know that I never wanted to come between you two. I'm sorry if I did. I ended the call, setting my phone down on the table with trembling hands. Her words echoed in my mind, but they did little to soothe the ache in my chest. I had part of the story now, but the bigger question still remained. What was I supposed to do about him? Could I move past this? Did I even want to? The call with her left me with more clarity, but it also opened the floodgates of emotions I'd been holding back. I needed answers from him now. Real answers, not the vague excuses or half-truths he had been feeding me. I sat for a while, staring at the wall, rehearsing what I would say. The longer I waited, the more the anger and hurt simmered inside me. When I finally walked into the living room, he was sitting on the couch, his head buried in his hands. He looked up when he heard me, his face a mix of guilt and dread. Did you talk to her? He asked, his voice hesitant. I nodded, crossing my arms. I did. She told me everything, I said sharply. How you offered her your car, how you told her it was fine because I supposedly knew, and how you were just being nice. My words were laced with sarcasm, and I could see him shrink under the weight of them. He opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. You lied to me. You went behind my back. You dragged her into this, and for what? To impress her? My voice cracked slightly, but I pressed on, refusing to let him see how broken I felt. Did you really think that was okay? His shoulders slumped as he tried to find the right words, but nothing he said could undo the damage. I didn't mean for it to get like this, he started, his voice soft and defensive. I was trying to help her, and I don't know. I made a mistake. I threw up my hands, exasperated. A mistake? That's all you have to say? You didn't just make a mistake. You chose her over me. You prioritized her feelings, her needs, over mine. Do you even realize what that says about how you see me? He looked away, his jaw tightening. I know I messed up, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't thinking clearly. I didn't mean to hurt you. The anger bubbled up again, and I took a step closer. You didn't mean to hurt me? How do you think it feels to find out that my boyfriend, the person I'm supposed to trust the most, has been thinking about someone else? That you went out of your way to impress her, to make her feel special, while I was left in the dark? He finally looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt. It wasn't like that, he said, his voice pleading. I wasn't trying to disrespect you. I thought she might. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence, and that silence told me everything I needed to know. You thought she might what? I pressed, my voice trembling. Might like you? Might see you differently if you handed her the keys to your precious car? And where does that leave me, huh? Was I just supposed to sit here and pretend it's okay? He stood up suddenly, his movements agitated. I know I was wrong, he shouted, his frustration spilling over. I know I hurt you, and I hate myself for it, okay? I don't even know why I did it. I felt like I needed to prove something. I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. Prove what? I asked, my voice quieter now. That you could get her attention? That you could make her see you the way you wanted? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. I don't know. Maybe. I don't even know what I was thinking, he admitted, his voice breaking. But I swear, it didn't mean anything. It was stupid, and it's over. The tears I had been holding back finally spilled over. It's not just about what you did, I said, my voice thick with emotion. It's about what it means for us. How can I trust you now? How can I believe that I'm enough for you when you're out here trying to win someone else over? He stopped pacing and turned to me, his face desperate. You are enough, he said, his voice earnest. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I swear I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Please, just give me a chance. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that he could change, that this was just a moment of weakness. But deep down, I wasn't sure if I could move past it. The trust we had built felt shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. I need time, I said finally, my voice steady despite the tears. I need to figure out if this is something I can forgive. Because right now, I don't know. He nodded, his shoulders slumping as the weight of my words sank in. Take all the time you need, he said quietly. I'll wait. I turned and walked away, my heart heavy with the uncertainty of what came next. I didn't know if we could fix this, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to rush into forgiveness just to make him feel better. This was my decision, and it was one I needed to make for myself. The days that followed felt like a blur. Each one brought a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and confusion. I couldn't stop replaying his confession in my mind, the way he admitted to trying to impress her. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about the cracks it revealed in our relationship. Cracks I hadn't noticed until now. I tried to distract myself, throwing myself into work and spending time with friends who didn't know the full story. But no matter how much I tried to push it aside, the questions lingered. Could I forgive him? Did I even want to? And if I did, what would that say about me, about what I was willing to accept? One evening, I found myself sitting alone in my apartment, scrolling aimlessly through my phone. My thumb hovered over his name in my messages. He'd sent me a few texts since our confrontation, each one apologetic but restrained. He wasn't pressuring me, and I appreciated that, but his words still felt hollow. I know I hurt you. I'll do anything to fix this. Please take your time. I'm here when you're ready to talk. I hate what I did. I hate myself for it. Each message made me feel a pang of guilt, but I reminded myself that his feelings weren't my responsibility. I was the one who had been hurt, the one left questioning everything. If he truly wanted to make things right, he needed to give me the space to decide what that even meant. I put my phone down and walked over to the window, staring out at the city lights. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to think about what I wanted. Not for him, not for our relationship, but for me. What did I need to move forward, with or without him? The answer was painfully clear. I needed honesty, not just from him, but from myself. I needed to stop avoiding the hard truths about what this betrayal meant, and whether I could ever truly trust him again. The next morning, I decided to take the first step. I called my friend, the one who had unknowingly become the center of this mess. "Can we meet?" I asked, my voice steady despite the unease I felt. She agreed immediately, and within an hour, we were sitting across from each other at a quiet cafe. Her expression was a mix of guilt and concern. "I'm glad you called," she said softly. "I've been thinking about what happened, and I feel terrible. I never meant to come between you two." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I know you didn't," I said, "but I need to understand, did you ever get the sense that he liked you? That he saw you as more than just my friend?" She hesitated, her brow furrowing as she considered my question. "Honestly, no," she said finally. "I never thought of him that way, and he never gave me any reason to think he thought of me that way either. Until now, I didn't even realize he might have feelings for me." Her words brought a strange mix of relief and sadness. On one hand, it confirmed that she hadn't knowingly played a part in his betrayal. On the other hand, it highlighted just how far he had gone in his mind, building fantasies without considering the reality of our relationship. "I believe you," I said, my voice quieter now. "But this whole thing has made me question everything. Not just about him, but about us, about the kind of people I surround myself with." She reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. "I get it," she said gently, "and I want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what you decide to do." I gave her a small, grateful smile, though the weight of the situation still lingered. I knew that whatever decision I made, it would have to be for me, and me alone. That evening, I sat down and wrote out everything I wanted to say to him. It wasn't a letter of forgiveness or a declaration of love. It was simply the truth. Raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic. The next time we spoke, I would make sure he understood exactly how his actions had hurt me and what I needed to move forward, whether or not that included him. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't rushing to fix things or patch up the cracks in our relationship. I was choosing to face them head on, even if it meant walking away. The next evening, I asked him to meet me. We agreed to talk at my apartment, where the walls carried memories of better days. I wasn't sure how this conversation would end, but I knew it had to happen. I needed closure, whether it was the kind that let us rebuild or the kind that let me walk away. When he arrived, his expression was a mixture of hope and dread. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. But I quickly reminded myself that this wasn't about easing his guilt. It was about finding peace for myself. "Thanks for coming," I said as I gestured for him to sit. He nodded, sitting on the edge of the couch like he was ready to be judged. I sat across from him, my hands clasped in my lap to steady myself. "I've spent the past few days thinking about what happened," I began, my voice calm but firm, "about why you did what you did and what it means for us." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up a hand. "Let me finish," I said. "I need you to hear me out." He nodded, leaning back slightly as I continued. "You didn't just lend your car to someone, you lent it to her, my friend, because you thought she might like you. And whether or not you acted on those feelings, the fact that you had them, the fact that you prioritized her comfort over my trust, that's what broke me." His eyes glistened with unshed tears, but I pressed on, determined to say everything I needed to say. "You told me you weren't thinking, that it was a mistake, but you were thinking. You made a choice, a selfish, hurtful choice that told me exactly where I stood in your life, and it wasn't first." He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back, folding my arms protectively across my chest. "I trusted you," I said, my voice trembling. "I believed in us, and you didn't just betray that trust. You made me feel small, invisible, like I wasn't enough." "I'm sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I know I messed up, and I hate myself for it. Please, just tell me what I can do to fix this." I looked at him, seeing the pain etched across his face. For a brief moment, I wanted to believe that he could change, that this was just a terrible mistake we could move past. But deep down, I knew better. This wasn't just about the car, or my friend, or his feelings. This was about something bigger, about trust, respect, and the kind of love I deserved. "I don't think you can," I said softly, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my cheeks. "Because the truth is, I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at you the same way again. And I deserve someone who makes me feel like I'm enough, Someone who doesn't need to prove anything to anyone else. He stared at me, his face crumpling as my words sank in. "So, that's it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "You're giving up on us?" I shook my head, my heart aching even as I spoke. "I'm not giving up. I'm letting go. There's a difference. I'm choosing to put myself first, to stop holding on to something that's only causing me pain." The room fell silent as he processed what I'd said. Finally, he stood, his movements slow and reluctant. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice heavy with regret, "for everything." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. He hesitated for a moment, as if waiting for me to change my mind, but when I didn't, he walked to the door, pausing just long enough to look back at me one last time. And then he was gone. As the door closed behind him, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. I had lost something, but in doing so, I had gained something far more important: myself. That night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. The pain was still there, a dull ache that would take time to heal. But alongside it, I felt a quiet strength, a spark of resilience I hadn't known I had. For the first time in days, I allowed myself to dream about the future. A future where I wasn't defined by someone else's choices, where I didn't have to question my worth or fight for a place in someone's heart. A future where I could truly be free. I whispered a silent promise to myself: to never settle for less than I deserved, to always choose love that uplifts and respects me. And as I sat there, staring out into the night, I felt a glimmer of hope, a reminder that even in the face of heartbreak, I had the power to rebuild, to move forward, to thrive.